Men are men, women are women. God created you the way he wanted you to be.
A Kentucky legislator's podcast comments describe transgender children and the parents who support them as mentally ill. And now they're getting the attention of Kentuckians. This is Wave News at 6. I'm Myra Ansari.
I'm John Bull. Republican Josh Calloway, Breckinridge County, was a vocal leader of Kentucky's new trans laws. Wave News reporter David Mattingly has more on Calloway's comments and the reaction.
John, his comments came in a podcast, and they're getting statewide attention right now. And Josh Calloway indicates the sweeping anti-trans law that passed in Kentucky is just the beginning.
There is an attack against the innocence of children. There's an attack against the minds of children.
Republican Representative Josh Calloway was a leading supporter of anti-trans legislation that resulted in restricting the use of pronouns and restrooms in schools and banning transgender treatments in Kentucky for anyone under 18. His new podcast goes after national retailer Target for offering trans-supporting swimwear.
This is not just for people in select stores in society. Right. They are going after our children, putting it at the front door.
But criticism erupted almost immediately when the podcast was promoted Wednesday, saying the LGBTQI plus community is a disease. Fairness Campaign Executive Director Chris Hartman lobbied unsuccessfully to stop Calloway in the legislature.
What didn't surprise me that not just was it put there, but that he doubled down on it.
Calloway responded late Tuesday saying gender dysphoria is a psychiatric disease and gender ideology is spreading on social media as a social contagion and targeting confused children.
The things that Josh Calloway says, the anti-trans and anti-LGBTQ rhetoric that he espouses is 100% one of the leading contributing factors to those disproportionately high suicide rates.
The hour and 13-minute long podcast is full of dire warnings describing a national agenda that sows gender confusion with goals of controlling opinions and sexualizing children. Calloway warns of doctors pushing parents to transition their children, blaming mental illness for children wanting to transition, and the same for their parents.
If you are a parent and you want to transition your child to the opposite sex, then you have a parent that has a mental health issue.
Right. Calloway also discussed possible future legislative interests targeting objectionable books in schools and libraries. He was not available today for comment. David Mattingly, Wave News.
All right, you're watching the station, Kentucky's Conservative Outpost. And, of course, if you watched that story, we're talking about a Kentucky State Rep, Josh Calloway, who we wanted to bring on the program tonight and discuss the recent controversies and he's found himself in. And so, Josh, are you on the line here? So there we go.
Yes,
very
sir.
Good. Okay, great. So Josh, I don't guess you like Pride Month very much, do you? You're not you're not into the whole LGBT Pride Month thing.
Well,
no, I'm just
God hates pride. I just tend to go to his side with that.
There we go. Well said. Well said. Well, listen, we appreciate what you've done on with that House bill and protecting our children and standing up for things sensible. But I want to give you a chance just to respond to just the recent controversies. I know you've done some posts online explaining your words there, and I think you used the word the LGBT movement. I think is a disease. Am I saying that right, or is it just the whole lifestyle is a disease? And use the word disease, what I think is the buzzword that people are just pushing back on. It's like, what do you mean disease? Or but it's a mental disorder, which could be especially transgenderism, and has been classified as a mental disorder historically. And so a disease, mental disorder, what is it semantics, or how do you respond to that?
Well, the whole reasoning behind that, if people actually went and watched what I said, I was using and talking about the fact that and used an article that was stating that the trans mind is mutating. And so I was making that claim, as well as looking at what's happening with statistics on how that this social contagion is spreading. It's spreading across our country. Had a young gentleman that's helped me put these videos together, and he had some internet issue and wanted to help me out. So he uploaded for me and actually put that, based on what I said, he came to the conclusion, and he was the one that put the words in there that the LGBTQAI plus community is a disease. So he put that in there based on what I had said in the video of how that it was spreading and mutating. And he came to that conclusion.
Sure.
But the fact is it is spreading. It is mutating, and it's beyond the mental health disorder.
Yeah.
And I think that's the end result of the fact that it's wrong and the fact that God says that it's sin, and it causes people, you were seeing depression and all those things in our youth. And as it's moving across our society, I heard a number today that astounded me. I've got to do some research into the number, but nearly 40% of teenagers in the United States of America are saying that they have some type of leaning into LGBTQAI plus.
That's right.
That's unreal. And you go back 10 years and we're talking about 2 or 3% of the entire population. So I didn't specifically say that the LGBT community in regard to people are a disease, but I will say that it's spreading like a disease everywhere across this country. And that was the whole point. The neat thing was how many views that the Twitter post got, and then how not so many views that the actual video got. So people didn't actually go watch the video to see what I said. Yeah. They just took that description and ran with it. And that's fine because it did promote a conversation. And they said all I did was double down on it. What I doubled down on was the fact that it's wrong and that they are pushing this on our kids, and that I'm going to do everything within my power as long as God gives me the strength to fight against it and to push back.
Yeah, well said. You know, and I'm sure you've heard Elon Musk say this in the past, because he's come out against a lot of these radical left-wing ideas, and otherwise known as wokeism, right? So he'll say, well, woke, the woke mind virus is expanding. The woke mind virus, which is, it's the same idea. In other words, people are suggestible, right? And people can adopt ideas and on many different levels: political ideas, cultural ideas, personal sexuality is very suggestible, and you can, and these ideas can spread. So there's a reason suddenly that there's a lot of people that want to dress up like women, or a lot of this wasn't happening 10 years ago. Well, why is that? Well, because suddenly our culture it's in the social media ecosystem now. It's being promoted by this person, that company, this group, this media group, and so it's a suggestible thing. And so there's a moment we're living through where these things happen, and so actually, I want to pause right here. I'm going to play a video from a very interesting feminist, liberal author who studied these sort of issues for throughout her career, and she came to a conclusion that's very similar to ours. And so I want to play that here, and I got to get it teed up, but it's Camille Paglia, and so we'll do that right now.
Of what's happening today.
I don't want to get you to say anything you don't believe, but I'm interested in it because I want to be for liberation. I'm not going to stop anyone dressing how they will. But there's something weird about lots of young women wanting to be young men and lots of young men wanting to be women. I don't feel as though it's a great step forward myself. Thoughts?
Well, I say in the introduction to my new book, my new collection, my particular transgender rebellion came at a time when there wasn't these ideas in the air that the moment you are dissatisfied with the limitations of your present gender definition, that there is this enormous mechanism waiting to alter your body, to halt puberty, to slow your puberty down, to people, all very well-meaning and very sympathetic, are there to provide surgical intervention into and potential, permanent changes in your body with which there's no going back. Okay, I mean, for me, a sex change operation opens one door but closes many others. Right? So I personally believe that anyone who collaborates in an intrusion into a developing child's body and mind is guilty of child abuse, a crime against humanity. Okay, because that child is not prepared to make such a decision. Okay, I think that such decisions about sex reassignment surgery must wait when one attains a majority, which would be, it seems to me, a minimum of age 18. I'm very concerned with this because I think that it's become a fashion, okay, that the transgender definition has become a kind of convenient label for young people who may simply feel alienated, okay, culturally for many other reasons, okay. So that in the 1950s, they might have become a beatnik. In the 1960s, they might have become a hippie and taken mind-expanding drugs, okay. And so today, you're encouraged to think that it's an alienation is because you are not totally identifying with your particular inherited gender definition.
She has another segment where she talks about how this is really a sign of late stage culture, and we'll play that in a moment. But there we go. I mean, she was basically saying this is a fashion moment in a lot of ways. This is a fashionable idea in our culture, and this is a serious scholar, a liberal, a feminist, a lesbian, somebody who's actually dabbled in the whole transgender experience herself, and she's honest about it enough to say this is a moment. This is a moment we're living through, and there's some things that are really wrong with it. And one thing you do not do is you do not alter surgically children. And Josh Calloway, you authored a bill that to protect children in the state, and I want to. Can you talk about that bill and what it does? Because I think certainly we needed that sort of help.
Yes, sir. So we had several bills that were filed in the 2023 session. I had authored House Bill 173 that actually did a lot of things in regard to parental rights and education into this sexual identity and sexual orientation, those types of things, to try to prohibit that from being taught in schools. We also had House Bill 470 that Representative Decker had filed that dealt with these gender transition surgeries. And then Senate Bill 150 was filed over in the Senate that morphed into all of these bills into one. And Senate Bill 150 is what we ultimately passed. And it basically dealt with this gender mutilation and these irreversible drugs that kids are being given to change their identity. And it also dealt with the school system as well and the teaching of these types of things in the school, whether it be, sex ed before sixth grade or teaching the gender identity, sexual orientation through any grade. So we blocked that from being able to be taught. And the reason being is just what you said and what she was saying. It has come about as a socially accepted thing, socially pushed thing now, and it's being pushed from all sides. And it's amazing what's revealed. You actually made the statement a little bit ago and made a statement, and it brought to my mind this fact. If you'll remember when all of this started and all of the, when it was just the L, G, and maybe the B, when they started having the conversations in public and they wanted to be accepted, which was not their goal. Their goal was to be promoted, but they wanted to be accepted. And they made the statement, we can't help it. We were born this way. This is not a choice. This is how that we were born. Well, now gender is fluid. That means everybody gets to whatever day of the week they decide to choose what they want to be. They choose what they want to be. And I'll tell you what they despise worse than being told that this is a disease. They despise being told that this is a choice, because it is a choice.
Right.
Which is why I think that it is so wrong to push this upon our children and to put it in the minds of our children and to put it in their faces everywhere that they go. If it's a choice and there are things that are God ordained that have predictable outcomes, man, woman, child. Those are just predictable. It's just what's going to happen. When you place anything out in front of children as being the norm and giving them as a choice, especially in the society that we live in today and the social pressure and push to be accepted and inclusive, of course, children are going to lean in that direction and they're going to, why not? Why would we not want to be acceptive of everybody? Why would we not want to include everybody? And they just fall into that mindset. That's why I'm so against it, because it is a choice. It can be helped, and it's helped by making good choices.
That's right. Yeah, exactly right. They've taken empathy and they've weaponized it, and so because Americans are good people, right? At our base, we have a good ethos. No, we're all born sinners, right? So we're all, but America as a whole culturally has been a pretty solid country, and it's because of our Judeo-Christian heritage, right? And so we want to help people. We want to give people the rights that they deserve. So, but that movement has basically weaponized the goodwill of Americans and empathy, and basically taken that and use it as a club to beat you over the head with if you have any sort of question about is this good for you or is this good for our culture? And so, and I want to unpack the choice thing a bit too, because there are a lot of people that say, well, I don't have a choice. I was born this way. And so we need to unpack that on some level. I think that, first of all, transition surgery, that's a choice,
Right.
Choosing to dress up like a woman when you're a man, that's a choice. Now then you kind of get into is someone with the same sex attraction, is that a choice? And there's a lot of discussion on that. I fall in the line that with men it's a little more fixed, but it comes from some deep-seated issues that usually happen in childhood. As lack of a loving father is generally the reason there, or which you add abuse to that. Molestation, banned. They're on track with an unmet need that somehow homosexuality meets for them, and that's men. And it's hard. It's difficult because it becomes a fixed sort of thing in their head, but that can be turned around, and it's people can criticize you about what do you mean you're trying to make gays ungay, whatever. But I've known people that used to live that lifestyle and are no longer living that lifestyle, and yes, you can turn from that, and your attractions, can change. With women, much more suggestible, it seems. I mean, I'm sure you've met people in my life or your life, and I know met people in my life that I've seen lots of women that have, suddenly it's fashionable to have a girlfriend, and so now they're suddenly they have a girlfriend one week. Well, the next week they got a boyfriend, and so it's like women's sexuality is a little more fluid and suggestible. But so is it a choice there? I don't, who knows? But at the end of the day, there's a perfect will that God has for man, and we live in this fallen world, and so and there's hope to live the life that He's called us to live, and also if we do, you flourish, and our society flourishes, and because that's I'm sorry, I'm on a soapbox here, but let me just say this: if there's a reason societies fail, right? There's a reason societies succeed, and I'm going to pause here, and I'm going to finish the clip that Camille Paglia said, because she talks about this moment in history, and she uses other cultures as a moment. And I'm going to play this real quick, and I'd love to get your comments on it. So we'll go back to this.
I'm very concerned about this. I think that a lot of it, I think that the collaboration of the bureaucratic machinery with it has to do with the assault on masculinity. Okay. Okay. So you see, gender doesn't really exist. It's not really polarity. I mean, everything's all about expanding women's rights, but also terminating men. Okay, and defining men out of existence. Masculinity is by definition toxic. Okay, masculinity doesn't exist. And you see, this is the proof of it. Now I began all of my studies. My book, Sexual Personae, began as a dissertation at Yale graduate school on androgyny. I've always been fascinated, attracted to the subject of androgyny, and that's what sexual personae is. I explored it in history. But the more I explored it, I realized that that historically the movement toward androgyny occurs in late phases of culture. Okay, as a civilization is starting to unravel. Okay, and that you can find it again and again and again through history in the Greek art. Okay, you can see it happening. All of a sudden, okay, there's a kind of there's the sculptures of handsome nude young men athletes that used to be very robust. Okay, in the archaic period, suddenly began to seem like wet noodles. Okay, toward the end. Okay, and that the people who live in such periods, a late phase of culture, whether it's the Hellenistic era, whether it's the Roman Empire, whether it's the Mauve decade of Oscar Wilde in the 1890s, whether it's Weimar Germany, people who live at such times, okay, feel that they're very sophisticated, they're very cosmopolitan, okay, and homosexuality, heterosexuality, so what, anything goes, and so on. All right, and so, but from the perspective of historical distance, okay, you can see that it's a culture that no longer believes in itself, okay, and then what you invariably get are people who are convinced of the power of heroic masculinity, okay, on the edges, whether they're the Vandals and the Huns, okay, or whether they're the barbarians of ISIS, okay, you see them, starting to mass on the outsides of the culture, and that's what we have right now. That there is a tremendous and rather terrifying disconnect between the infatuation with the transgender movement in our own culture and what's going on out there, okay.
There we go. I mean, this is just a sign of where America is right now. And this isn't this new civil rights movement that needs to occur. No, this is just a moment in history that lots of cultures have gone through and that we're working ourselves into. But Josh, you've got a background as a pastor, I believe. I think you have a ministry background. And I want to ask your opinion on this, because America is a unique country, unique history, because we have this Judeo-Christian founding, and we have this sense of renewal and revival that occurs, so yeah, we're fighting the good fight politically, and you're on the front lines of that, but are we in a late stage civilizational moment here where this is where all hope is lost and we're just going to fight a rearguard action, or is there some sort of moment for renewal that we could have through all this?
Well, there's a few things that, if I can, I want to go back just a little bit on the statement you made a little bit ago, and then bring us to what we just watched in that video.
Yeah.
So we could have the spiritual discussion that man is born broken, right? So when people say we were born that way, well, we know what the Bible teaches about that. Man is born in sin. They're born a sinner. There's no end to the depravity of man. What makes man different than any other thing is the fact that we have this thing called a conscience that tells us what is right and what is wrong. So there are people, I put it this way, that are bent maybe in some areas that aren't in others. There are people that have inclinations towards certain things that maybe doesn't bother me or wouldn't bother you, or things that bother you that I don't have a problem, whatever the case may be. But we both have been given the same thing in regard to a conscience to be able to know what is right and what is wrong. Mm-hmm. And as we push against that conscience, that's when we begin to find ourselves steeping into deeper depravity, going deeper and further. And that's what we have seen happen with this whole idea of this gender identity, is that we started out with people that claimed they were pushed in a closet to just let us out of the closet, to don't just let us out of the closet, but accept us as we are, and to not just accept us as we are, but promote us for who we are, to wear our jersey on your back while you're out there skating around the ice hockey rink, to put our flag on your hockey stick. And if you don't, we're going to demand that you do, and we're going to call you out in public. So there's no end to this, because we're constantly pushing against conscience, against what is right and what is wrong. And what she said in that video is exactly right. The devil will always give an alternative to what is best and what God will want. We went through this period of time, as she said, in our culture, of young men that began to appear weak. It became cool to be weak. She used the term a wet noodle, but you know what I'm saying? They wanted to identify as not being, because masculinity was pushed back. It was not accepted, and feminism began to grow and begin to rise. Well, then all of a sudden we have no leaders, because we have young men who have been hiding in the shadows and have not come out and led and are not strong, and we have no leaders. So we see that as a problem. And now we have people that come on the scene, total different subject, but people like Andrew Tate and things like that, who are these overly masculine. Well, that's what a man is supposed to be. And so the devil's always constantly given the alternative for what God would desire and want in a nation. But the fact is, as long as that a man has an individual has a conscience, and as long as the church is in this world, I believe that there's hope. But I think no matter what happens, no matter where this thing goes and how bad that it gets, I don't think our marching orders ever change, that we are to say the truth, speak the truth, make sure the truth is known in every venue that we can, every opportunity that we get. And then what people do with truth will be based on what happens with our society as it moves forward. And it is a scary time to think of how quick we've got here. But, you know, we didn't get here as quickly as it appears in the media. We know that this has been the goal from the very beginning. It's been a Trojan horse that's been brought in with the ultimate end goal to get the children. And I'll say this without apology, that if they can normalize that it's okay for an 8-year-old to be able to change their gender and have surgery to do so, then they can also normalize that it's okay for an 8-year-old to move in with a 55-year-old and have a husband-wife relationship with.
That's right. That's right. It's where it goes. So they're looking for the next boundary, you know, that they're to cross. And you know, there's a good perspective on how we've gotten here, you know, just the mechanics of it, right? Let's talk about the whole LGBT movement. You know, of course, it starts with the Stonewall riots in the 1960s, and you know, and then that started a whole movement of, hey, we need to get rights for homosexuals who are oppressed in America, and like every movement, there's some truth to it, right? You know, there might be a moment where somebody's being mistreated and treated unfairly because of same-sex attractions that those folks are dealing with, and so yeah, maybe that's not the kind way to deal with things, and maybe there are some laws that can help with that, but so. We can argue the merits of that all day long, but you know, that movement basically culminated in the same-sex marriage ruling at the Supreme Court back in 2015. So that movement built up a lot of political steam, a lot of headway, a lot of resources, a lot of money, a lot of power, a whole industry to get that. Well, when they got that, which sort of basically. That was it. They hit the top of Mount Everest with that movement. What else could they do? Well, they had to go on to because they had this apparatus built. You know, this whole system was built. We need a new advocacy group to push forward. Well, it's
right.
no longer LGB. Let's add a T to that. Okay, that's the new group. There's a transgender group. So then now it's transgenders. So this past 7 or 8 years, that's all you've heard. You know, and the whole culture is just caught up with this. Well, that's on purpose. It's not just everybody's in the mood for it. It's a driven agenda, and so the idea that you posited early on that this is sort of a social contagion and a mental and spiritual contagion. That's you know, of course your assistant used the word disease in the subtitle. You didn't use that. That wasn't your language. But at the same time, the concept is true. This is a very suggestible sort of thing, and there's now this sudden interest in this transgender movement and ideology amongst people that when you do surveys, it's like suddenly people, well, maybe I don't know, maybe I was born a girl. I don't know, maybe I was born a boy. It just kind of lives in your head because it's everywhere now. And it's like, well, Dylan Mulvaney, he is kind of funny and he's on the beer can. Well, you know. One day I did look at a guy kind of weird. Maybe I'm going to do it. You know, it gets into this. You know, that's what's going on. It's just this moment.
Because
right?
they're trying to change the norm.
They're
right. Changing the norm.
Exactly. But it's an agenda. But it's part of this whole apparatus that's there. Yeah.
That's exactly right. But Pride Month doesn't celebrate that the government doesn't oppress us anymore. It celebrates the behavior.
That's right.
And if you don't subscribe to the behavior, you're a bigot.
Right.
See, that's the difference. They always want to make this, well, look at the civil rights movement and look at what happened and look at the good that came from it. You're not promoting that you don't want to be oppressed. You're promoting your behavior.
That's right.
That's why part of my bill dealt with being able to put these pride flags, because it is a sexually suggestive flag. It doesn't represent these people that say, well, we're liberated. It represents an actual orientation, and it's sexual in nature. And so that's kind of where we're at. But this is the thing.
And they're looking for conformity. It's like this whole movement wants to enforce conformity to its ideas. And so the pride movement is like, okay, we're going to take this month to quote weed out everybody in society that might have an issue with this. And so that's our goal for this 1 month a year. We're gonna it's like a purge. It's like a fast or something. Like you're purging.
Yes.
We're going to go through this. People don't line up with this. We're going to find out who you are. Because if you get uncomfortable with that pride flag in your office, well, the HR department, they're kind of woke. And they kind of like our, and so they're going to just remember that in the next review. So-and-so doesn't like that pride flag.
That's right.
And so this is, it's a political purge moment that's going on in our culture. And people that are discerning and see this, and I tell you who really picks up on this really well, Josh, and I don't know if you've ever talked to people like this, people that were born and raised in the former Soviet bloc, right? People that were born in East Germany, right, and watched how that government used, this same sort of a tactic to weed out people that weren't loyal to the state. If you weren't a good communist, we could find that out. We'll weed that out. We won't, and they did it using similar tactics. There's a whole, you can YouTube it. There's a whole, discussion about that. And so people, this is really what this moment is. It's not let's celebrate rights, like you said. It's not celebrating the rights. It's like who now disagrees? Who doesn't really conform and bow down to this? We're going to get you now. And so I'm sorry. That's what
and it's changing. The goal is to change the norm. So it is an attack against the norms, what is normal. And that's, what I was saying earlier is that, they want to say that this lifestyle has the same moral equivalency as a heterosexual lifestyle does. A man, woman, and man, woman, transgender, whatever it is, all of these have the same moral equivalency, but they don't all produce the same end result. And the end result came from the norm that God ascribed in the very beginning, and that was man, woman produces child. And so it's all a disruption of the norm. And what better way to disrupt the norm than to minds of kids? Because if you get it in their minds, as children, we see what happens with false doctrine, false religions, whatever the case may be. If you get it in children, you have them for a lifetime unless something miraculous intervenes.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that's hence the movement to to bring this teaching into schools and which I think you've helped address in some of your laws, and also to your point about morality, a lot of the folks on that side would say, well, you're just trying to impose your morality on us. We're not Christians. We don't believe in the Bible. We don't believe in that kind of worldview, and so who are you to be trying to put your morality on us? But aren't they doing the same thing with their worldview? Aren't they trying to put their morality on us? And so somebody's morality's got to play out here. I mean, law reflects some sort of worldview, some sort of morality.
That's right.
And so what wins? And so Josh, I argue that what you're putting forward is just, it should win because it works. It's shown for about 6,000 years of history that it works.
The truth absolutely works. And a person, you can ignore reality, but you cannot ignore the results of ignoring reality.
Yeah.
And if we were to look right now and look at the consequences or the results of ignoring the reality, what we would find out is that the only one type of relationship brings offspring. And we have seen a major decline in children that are being born in the United States of America and in a lot of countries.
That's right. Yeah.
The ignoring of reality, if it was okay for everybody to be that way, then what happens with our future? And that's the question, I think, that brings us down to just moral truth. So we have to have a remnant, at least,
right?
And a revival would mean that a lot more people would, but at least a remnant of people that says that we are going to stay with what we know is right, what we know to be truth, what we know works.
Right.
And we're going to teach that to our children so that we can see this in generations to come.
That's
Otherwise,
right.
it completely breaks down. And a society cannot sustain itself if it does not have normalcy.
Right. Exactly. Right. Well, and I might reframe it this way too. I think it's probably still okay. I mean, listen, if you want to live that lifestyle, and I can't control you, right? I'm not somebody that's going to come in and say, that's not okay, you're locked up. We're not going back to those days. We're not going to go back to making homosexuality an offense where you get locked up. I don't think that's really healthy, and we should encourage that. But like you said, you have to have some sort of norm that we celebrate and we lift up, because that's an important thing for a culture to sort of point to. If not, you have confusion and you'll find things go off track. And we used to all have consensus on that. We also used to all agree on this, but we don't now, because we have this multicultural, very secular society, and so. That's not sustainable. I mean, do you think, is that sustainable? I mean, can we live that way much longer? Because, like you said, we're not having kids.
It's not sustainable because look at how far that we have come and how quick we have come here. I don't know did you see the video that Planned Parenthood had put out here not too long ago with that woman who claimed to be a transgender man who had got pregnant and had an abortion? Did you see that? Have you seen that video?
No.
You should go watch that video. She was celebrating. She said the most compassionate thing that she had ever done in her life was to have that abortion. I don't know how she comes to that conclusion on killing a child. But the whole title of the video basically was saying that abortion's for anything now. And so it used to be abortion was, and this is a different subject, but I'm making a point here. Abortion was about the life of a mother. And then it's about, well, what if the child is going to die? Then it's about, well, what if the child has a deformity? Then it's about, well, what if the child is not the gender that we want it to be? Now, this lady was celebrating that she wanted to become a man, and she couldn't become a man because she had a baby in her womb. So she had to get the baby out of her womb so she could identify for who and what she was. That's not a sustainable culture any society can maintain and have a future. And so, and that's the extreme end of it. I get that. But we have to fight back, I think, with every fiber of our being for what is right. And you're right. People talk about, I get this, the people that'll email me every once in a while and say, keep your God out of my government and all those types of things. And I understand sometimes what they're saying or the point that they're trying to make. But when it comes to what I personally believe in truth, and well, do you believe this certain lifestyle is a sin? Well, I think lying is a sin according to the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that I hate or despise somebody that lies. I've told lies in my life and had to get forgiveness for it,
Right.
And so this is not anything about hate. This is about what is right and what is wrong. And we want to promote what is right, and we want to promote what God has ordained that sustains itself. And anything that can't sustain itself, if we don't stop it and it becomes the norm, it becomes the end. Yeah. That's the end. And, God, I know, will determine when the end comes. but the end of the society as we know it, and the end of the society that we want our kids and our grandkids to grow up in, that is what I'm fighting for. I have 2 grandkids and 2 on the way. And if that doesn't wake a person up to stand up and to do what is right and to fight, I don't know what else can. To see their life, to know how you were raised and the opportunities you had, and then look at what our kids are going to be faced with and our grandkids. And I think it's so important that we speak out on these things, speak up. And, I tell people all the time, if they wouldn't keep putting it in our face, we probably wouldn't talk about it near as much. But every time you turn around, every store you walk into, every commercial that comes on YouTube, you name it, wherever you look, they're putting it there. So we have no choice but to address it because it's right here in front of us.
That's right. Yeah. And gosh, we're way over time, but I don't care because this has been a great conversation. And I wanted to bring in Bob Scott, but and I need to just do that because I'll just keep going here. So, Bob, I apologize, but
that's good.
We'll edit this down, make it maybe a couple of programs or something. But go ahead, Bob. So, what are your thoughts on all this?
I've been sitting here soaking it in, and Josh, first, thank you for being willing to be that tip of the spear to say the difficult things that need to be said, and more importantly, putting some action behind your thoughts and beliefs. I was thinking, Tom, of the scripture that comes from Proverbs 22:6. It says, train up a child in the way he shall go, and when he gets old, he will not depart from that. And this is an intentional thing. We saw the San Francisco Gay Men's Choir several years ago actually put out a song. It was all over the internet that says, we're coming after your children. And they were singing that, and making that a point. And everybody kind of laughed and chuckled about that. Oh yeah, they're coming after our children. Well, guess what? They are coming after our children.
They are. That's right. It was kind of tongue in cheek, I guess, on their part, but it reflected a consensus within the community that, hey, sorry, we know we have to, because here's the deal, guys. This sort of lifestyle, this stuff it's not sustainable as a culture, and so on 2 levels. Physically, biologically, it just doesn't work. It doesn't play out. Right. Your enemies basically, overwhelm you because you have no masculinity to fight anymore. And then secondly, you stop having kids. But thirdly, it's not sustainable just from a political movement unless there's such a heavy indoctrination that's a top-down browbeating. That's the only way that movement can keep this sort of moment for themselves, is to just beat everybody into a fear of asking questions. And so they know that instinctively. So they know, okay, we got to get to the kids. Okay, we got to have Pride Month. We got to get all the corporations to line up with us. We got to, if we don't do that, it's all over. We're back to the closets, And they know that instinctively. And so, I'm sorry. It's very clear. That's why they do this. So, but.
It's a shame, and it's certainly not what the Lord wants.
No.
And at the end of the day, God loves anybody that says that they're transgender or homosexual.
Yeah.
He loves them. And, the bottom line is he has called us, whatever sin that we're walking in, to repentance, And as you said earlier, we're not here to cast stones at anybody. We're here, as Josh was pointing out, to stand up and say this is insanity. And what you were just saying, Tom, society can't continue to sustain itself if it keeps running in this direction, and we are certainly running in a direction that will 100% lead to ruin. And it's time, and one of the things I wanted to point out, I don't know if you all have seen this, we talked about this maybe in another program, but there is a lot even in the gay/liberal side, and you had that one woman on earlier that was talking about this, that are opposed to this, and don't want to see this happening. They want it to go away as much as we do.
Especially a lot of feminists. It's like, hold on, we fought hard for women's rights, and we think women are kind of born unique because we're women. And now suddenly, some guy who thinks he's a woman can come in and beat us in our track meets because. No, I'm a feminist, and we fought for these rights, and so even within that movement, there's a lot of disagreement.
Seeing some waking up, there's not enough though, and that's what my biggest concern is. Some are, and there's some famous ones. I think Martina. No, it wasn't Martina. Who was it? Maybe it was Martina Navratilova. Recently, spoke out against this. As far as what's happening. Whole idea of transgenderism and how it really and truly is ruining women's sports, and all the achievements that the feminist movement have made with regard to women's sports, especially, dialing in and zeroing in on that. We talk about Riley Gaines, and we see the brave stance that she took as a swimmer at the University of Kentucky, now standing up and saying, no, this is wrong. And it is, and that's the key thing is in love, people like Josh, people like Bill Wesley, Jennifer Decker, we've mentioned several representatives, Shane Baker, Ryan Dotson. There's many representatives in our state legislature that are standing up and calling it for what it is, and that's something that needs to really start coming out more and more. Again, in a loving way, but still, sometimes the ultimate act of love is speaking and saying those difficult things.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, Josh, we went way over time, and Bob's points are so poignant right there. And I wanted to end with this. What's next for these sort of issues in this state? What needs to be done still on a political level to help protect children, to help protect women's sports, to help protect religious freedom? Is everything done? Are we just, we've locked it all up, and Kentucky's a good, somewhat stable state in that front, or is there still more do we need to do? And what can we do to help the fight with you and your colleagues?
No, I appreciate you guys having me on. There's plenty that's still left to be done. If you go back and look, the bills, House Bill 173, House Bill 177, House Bill 470, those were three bills that pieces of those were taken and put into Senate Bill 150 that became the ultimate bill that we passed addressing some of these things. But they're definitely not an end-all be-all, and nor did that bill go near far enough in a lot of areas. And it does take consensus to do that. So we need the right kind of people in there that are willing to be bold, willing to take a stand. But we've got to address a lot of things. From a women's sports standpoint, I supported the bill. I was disappointed that we took out and made it about fairness instead of making it about right and wrong. We have a tendency to do this with policy because then you protect emotions and feelings and say, well, it doesn't actually become competitive till they hit the sixth grade. So we'll just make this for sixth grade and up, when those are the most formidable years of kids' life, when you be telling them, no, you cannot compete with this gender because that's not the gender you were born. So I think we've got to look at those areas that we make sure that we're protecting kids from kindergarten all the way through 12th grade, and then even into our universities that are publicly funded. The other thing that we have to look at is this curriculum issue. We have curriculum that is being taught that is biased, or that is leaving out parts of history, or that is teaching this gender ideology that gets slipped in. And I think being able to, and in House Bill 173, I deeply delved into that issue and tried to address that. And so I intend to bring that back as a standalone bill. The other thing that we have to do is the pornography that is getting into our schools. It gets in there most of the time. It comes in through this gender ideology. So it is a book that is meant to be inclusive. But if y'all are familiar a little bit with what happened in the Jefferson County school system, there was a book in there called Gender Queer The book depicts sex acts with young people. It is drawn out cartoonish, but it's very graphic. It is pornographic. It is filth. Yep. And we passed a bill to give parents the opportunity to make a complaint and a process, but it doesn't just say if it's pornographic, get it out. So that bill would not even remove that particular book from our school system, which the Jefferson County School board that was appointed to look over that all voted in favor to keep that book in the school because they said it had inclusivity value to students so that they could know about how other kids feel and how other kids think. So we're going to have to go deeper into these issues to make sure that we protect the innocence and the minds of kids. And the reason being is the mind is the gateway to the heart. And if the devil gets a hold of their mind, he gets to their heart and blocks God from doing what he wants to do, makes it hard for him to get to their heart. And so those are some areas that I think that we have to continue to work on, push back on. We need a commissioner of education that has a backbone like a saw log and has morals unlike we haven't seen in the state to just clean house and make sure that our public school system is safe for our kids and protects the society as we want it to be. Now that sounds, I've heard people tell me, well, that's radical to make that kind of statement, but that's what the other side's been doing for the last 60, 70 years. And that's why we are where we are. Yeah. And I think it's time that we stand up and say, this is what we want society to look like, craft policy to make it look like that, keep government out where it has no business being in, and people lead a happy life, and God blesses that.
Yeah, it was so well said, because it's not like we have a choice anymore. One view of the world or the other is going to win, and right now the view of the world that this movement, this LGBT movement, is pushing is just hurtful and harmful to people, and you just, I'm sorry, it is, and so if you're a good person of goodwill, you need to stand up and fight against the ideas, but yet still loving the people that are involved in that.
Yes,
because they're animated by some hurts and some issues that they're dealing with that are real issues, and so it's a real challenge. But Josh, I think you're walking it out at the best a politician can walk out. And we support you and appreciate everything you're doing, and keep up the great work in our legislature, and you and your colleagues. Thank you for being on the show today. I think we ended up wanting to do one show, ended up doing two shows, or at least 50 minutes into this, but I think we'll make a couple of programs out of this. So thanks for your time. And
good deal. Thank you.
We will be in touch soon. So very good. Thanks, Josh. You're watching the station, Kentucky's Conservative Outpost.